So I want to do a video on 2D assets and some, I suppose, extended visual features. And one of the visual features that I'm most happy about is everything to do with my first project. Not everything to do with my first project, but a considerable amount. I was really pleased with how it turned out. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of the UI of Last Line. I wanted to kind of get the main menu to look like a poster on a war-torn sort of building in a war zone. So since I was already basing this game on some of L. Lozitsky's work, this is one of, well, actually, it didn't start like this. This was the original poster that L. Lozitsky did, and basically everything is the same. I obviously didn't draw any of that stuff. That'd be amazing. But I took sort of inspiration from the way in which the poster sort of, how it worked. So I didn't quite like the straight up, left to right, straight line text that he has, but I did really like this sort of arcing upwards with the angle of these sort of banners, I suppose. So that's kind of the inspiration where the typography sort of flows upwards in here, but I left the title at the top straight because, one, it's the name and the size of which I'm working with. So this image really sort of, it was one of the bases for this entire game. So that's where I got the tank from, the fact that it's dropping bombs. Yeah, it had to be by Missile Command, but this is really where the inspiration came from. And the use of black and white with red is famous for propaganda, but that is exactly what I tried to accomplish in all the features of this game. So first off, I started by just removing all of the typography in all the type in GIMP, and just trying to get it to a blended, sort of rough looking poster color type thing. And from there I created, I found a font that I really liked that sort of suited the Russian theme we've got going here, and I just placed that over for the final composition, the image that I had. Each of them were specifically separate sort of layers so that I could use them as buttons, and that really worked well for me. And this image, it's kind of a grainy, just black and white gunshots in the wall. It all worked rather well, especially with all the other elements I had going, like the music and stuff like that. So the next sort of visual feature that I ended up with, didn't really plan, was how dark the scene was. Everything had to be black and white. I already went into this project with that in mind, but what I really ended up with was this really cool contrast of like blurry images in the background through the fog, and the light fog or smoke in the background really highlighted those super dark, faint blurred around the edges models that I had. It also meant that a lot of the features in my foreground and midground didn't have to be very detailed. Just take a look around the map to show you guys. So really, the scene is still quite light, even though it's black and white, and it looks like Armageddon. But yeah, the black contrast of it really made these buildings stand out, and I think maybe it wasn't clear what they were, whether they were part of the game or just part of the scenery, until the bombs really started dropping, which is where colour comes in. And the colour that I've been stressing is core to the game. And those explosions that I've created are really simple. They're super simple because of the contrast of this whole thing. All I needed to do was a very bright white, sort of a plume of cloud, particle effect that, against everything else, that would look blinding, and that really worked well. It also became stressful because, it's covering up so much of the other stuff. It really looks like a big explosion, and that initial big impact of a bomb itself blinding really quickly, that was just a fog color change that's lerping backwards towards. But I think the composition and colors, even though it's on a grayscale, of this entire scene work really well together. Another sort of visual feature is these UI elements here, and they were just overlays of like a grayed out version and a white version of each silhouette, and they're just filled. Sort of the one covering over the top is filled, so it can be reduced in size and be used as sort of an indicator of what's happening. And this will also change color when it gets to 25%, which is another good visual indicator. So there's some more particle effects in this game that I was really proud of. Firstly was the explosion on contact with a shell with a bomb. We talked about this early in Trimester. We went over a sort of a visual technique that people can do. I didn't quite capture it too well here, but I think it's called bokeh, something around those lines. That kind of showed here, and it was one of the sort of what I wanted from this explosion, for the light to seem out of focus and very bright. With a grayscale environment, everything had to be from one extreme to the other extreme. And then there's some other features that I really like with this scope, and this scope was achieved by just many layers and just putting it together in GIMP. So this first little reticule here was something that kind of looks like what a tank would have. I realized that with the black small reticule here, it blended in way too much, so I've just adjusted that to be white. And then I just layered it with dust, particles, cracks, and really weathered it to make it look the way it is. I had a very distinctual goal in mind for this entire project, and I think I met it pretty well. And there's one last thing that involves me dying. just if you noticed that a lot of the bombs were headed behind the buildings, they looked like they could have been a threat. That's gameplay stuff, but just that blinding flash behind really contrasts the building as well. I think that worked really nicely, but what I wanted to talk about is still coming up. So, one of the major things I wanted this to play out like was a film, and I didn't really achieve that to the full length of what I wanted. I had originally wanted this to look like VHS, not white, but sort of dull, greyish white and fuzzy. But that fade to black with the storm / smoke particles sort of vibrating the top of the darkness really looked visually pleasing, and you had no control at that point. And the nukes, the bombs going off in the background, still like pushing through the fading darkness. That was something I was really happy that I got to achieve. But this credits was really designed to play out like an old style, maybe projector recording, and I didn't get time for that, which I'm quite upset about, but I still like the entire composition of the game. How it plays out, like interacting with the poster at the beginning, and then sort of moving towards a really full-on black and white dark sort of scene, and then a movie type ending. So that's really what I wanted to talk about through the extended visual features of this game. There are other extended visual features of the other games that I'd like to talk about as well, but for now this one I'm kind of finished on all the things I wanted to talk about. I might get into exactly how I did them. We'll go through some GIMP in another video, but that's all for now, so I'll see you in the next one.